51. Reports of boards and committees. A report of a subordinate board or a committee is an official statement formally adopted by and submitted in the name of the reporting body informing the parent assembly of action taken or recommended or information obtained. General considerations affecting board and committee reports. Limitation of report content to what has been properly agreed to. Except as noted in this paragraph, a report of a board or committee can contain only what has been agreed to by a majority vote at a regular, properly called meeting of which every member has been notified, or at an adjournment of one of these meetings, see 917 through 19, where a quorum of the board or committee was present. A presentation of facts or recommendations made merely upon separate consultation with every member of the board must be described thus to the parent assembly, and not as an official report of the board, see also 4916. In the case of a committee, however, if it is impractical to bring its members together for a meeting, the report of the committee can contain what has been agreed to by every one of its members. See also electronic meetings 930 through 36. Types of reports. For convenience in the discussion of this section, reports may be divided into two general categories as follows. A. Annual or periodic reports of boards or standing committees are usually submitted in accordance with requirements in the bylaws, are primarily for information, and should summarize important work done by the board or committee during the year or other period covered by the report. They may also contain recommendations, which may relate to general policy to be followed by the organization, or may propose specific action by its assembly. See next paragraph. B. Reports relating to single items of business arising during the year fall into a number of particular forms, which are described for the case of committees in 5130 and following. As will be seen from examples there, these reports can often be quite brief unless special circumstances or instructions to the reporting body call for a detailed presentation of facts. Recommendations in a report. In any report of a subordinate board or a committee of type A or B above, specific recommendations for immediate action by the parent assembly should be grouped at the end, repeating them if they have already been noted at separate places in the report, and should generally be cast in the form of one or more proposed resolutions. Although it is possible for a report, in the circumstances just described, to prevent resolutions which are not in the form of resolutions of motions, the adoption of such recommendations by the parent assembly may, depending on their wording or that of the motion to adopt, lead to confusion as to whether their adoption authorizes action or only has the force of a declaration of intent, requiring the adoption of subsequent resolutions for implementation. A board or committee is usually best fitted to prepare themselves to carry out its recommendations, and it should never leave this responsibility to others. When a report is made for the purpose of presenting recommendations on a single subject, especially if it is the report of a committee to which the subject was referred, it is often best for the formal report to be considered as much as possible to the recommendations, whether they are in the form of resolutions or otherwise. For examples, see examples in 5130 through 51. If this approach is followed and it is desired to bring supporting reasons to the attention of the assembly, the reporting member, that is, the person who presents the report, can include brief oral explanations with his presentation, or supporting reasons can be explained at greater length during debate on the report by the reporting member, who has the right to the floor first in debate, and also by other members of the board or committee, if appropriate, as the debate progresses. In the foregoing connection, it should be noted that under parliamentary conditions, the inclusion of supporting facts or reasoning in a report proposing certain action may tend to work against the taking of that action, since some members who might otherwise have been willing to accept the proposals may be led to vote against them if they disagree with the factual background to support it or the reasonings of the reporting body. Form of detailed report. If special conditions dictate that a report devoted to a single subject and presenting recommendations should include a full account of the details involved in the case, the body of the report is best organized according to the following topics as applicable. 1. A description of the way in which the reporting body, usually a committee in such cases, undertook its charge. 2. The facts uncovered or information obtained. 3. The findings and conclusions derived from the facts or information. And 4. Resolutions or recommendations. If for any reason one or more resolutions or recommendations are placed within this type of detailed report before its conclusion, they should be repeated at the end, as stated above. In this way, they can be more easily dealt with apart from any implied endorsement of reported facts and reasoning which some members may not accept. Presentation and reception of reports. A report of a board or committee to an assembly is presented at the proper time by a reporting member of the board or committee. For the report of a board whose chairman is also the presiding officer of the assembly, the secretary or another one of its members acts as reporting member. In the case of a committee, the committee chairman is the reporting member unless, because he does not agree to it with the reporter for any other reason, he does not wish to give it, in which case the event chooses another one of its members. In which event the committee chooses another one of its members. A reporting member makes or presents a report on behalf of a board or a committee when, having been assigned the floor for such a purpose in a meeting, he does one of the following things, depending upon the nature of the report and other conditions. A. Renders the report orally, if it is not in writing. B. Reads the report to the assembly and passes it to the chair or the secretary. Or C. Announces that he is submitting it and passes it to one of these officers to be read by a reading clerk. When the assembly hears the report thus read or orally rendered, it receives the report. The terms presentation and reception accordingly describe one and the same event from the respective viewpoints of the reporting member and the assembly. Motions for action on reports. Immediately after receiving a board's or a committee's report, unless it is a report containing only information on which no action is taken, 5153, an assembly normally considers whatever action may be recommended in or arise out of the report. In the remainder of this section, it is explained how such action under various conditions may involve the introduction of motions to implement recommendations or, occasionally, to adopt the entire report. Motions to implement recommendations. When a report contains recommendations, except in cases where the recommendations relate only to the adoption or rejection of questions that were referred while pending, 13, and consequently become pending automatically when reported, 5137 through 43, the presenting board or committee member usually makes the necessary motion to implement the recommendations at the conclusion of his presentation, provided he is a member of the assembly. See examples in 5131 through 35 and 5144 through 51, in which it is generally assumed that the reporting member is a member of the assembly. If the report is read by the secretary or a reading clerk, in such a case, the reporting member resumes the floor for the purpose of making the motion immediately after the reading is completed. No second is required in these cases, since the motion is made on behalf of the board or committee. See 411. If the person presenting the report is not a member of the assembly or for any other reason does not make the required motion to implement the recommendations as just described, any member of the assembly can do so, but the motion must then be seconded, or whether the proper motion is a matter of clear-cut procedure and must necessarily be introduced to resolve the case, the chair may sometimes expedite matters by assuming the motion, that is, stating the question on it without waiting for it to be made. Motion to adopt an entire report. In rare instances, after an assembly has received a report, it may have occasion to adopt the entire report. An affirmative vote on such a motion has the effect of the assembly's endorsing every word of the report, including the indicated facts and the reasoning, as its own statement. See also 1052 through 53. Unlike motions to take the action recommended in a report as desired above, a motion to adopt the report should be made by someone other than the reporting member and requires a second. Adoption of an entire report is seldom wise, except when it is to be issued or published in the name of the whole organization. Equivalence of terms and incorrect motions. As applied to an assembly's action with respect to board or committee members or any of their contexts, the expressions adopt, accept, and agree to are all equivalent. That is, the text adopted becomes in effect the act or statement of the assembly. It is usually best to use the word adopt, however, since it is the least likely to be misunderstood. A common error is to move that a report be received after it has been read, apparently on the supposition that such a motion is necessary in order for the report to be taken under consideration or to be recorded as having been made. In fact, this motion is meaningless and is therefore not in order, since the report has already been received. Even before a report has been read, a motion to receive it is unnecessary if the time for its reception is established by the order of business, or if no member objects. See also below. Another error, less common but dangerous, is to move after the report has been read or even before the reading. Pardon me, this book is being difficult. Goodness. That it be accepted when the actual intent is that of the motion to receive as just explained, or of a legitimate motion to receive made before the request is read. If a motion to accept made under any of these circumstances it is adopted and is given its proper interpretation, it implies that the assembly has endorsed the committee report. Applicability of regular rules to questions arising out of reports. When a board or committee report has been received and the chair stated the question on the adoption of the motion, resolutions, recommendations, or report, whether the question became pending automatically or the proper motion was made or was assumed by the chair as explained above, the matter is treated as any other main question, is open to debate and amendment, and can have any of the subsidiary motions applied to it. Similarly, if a committee to which the main question was referred has recommended that it be amended or definitely or indefinitely postponed, the motion to take such action is debatable and, for primary amendment or definite postponement, amendable under the regular rules for these motions. In the foregoing connection, it should be noted that the consideration of a matter that was referred to a board or committee cannot be objected to, 26, when it is reported on, regardless of whether the matter was referred to as a pending question, 13, or as a subject on which no question was pending. The reason is that an objection to the consideration of a question can be raised only against an original made motion at the time of its introduction, and the reported matter in no case has this status, since A, if it was referred as a pending question, it was introduced at an earlier time, or B, if it was referred as a subject on which no question was pending, the main question introduced following the report is an incidental made motion. See 10.4 through 6. Conditions for amendment of a report by the Assembly before its adoption. An Assembly that is to adopt an entire report which it has received can amend the report, but the text is published or recorded must not make the reporting board or committee appear to say anything different from the wording that was actually reported. For this reason, the published or recorded text must show clearly the reported version and the changes that the Assembly has made. For example, by enclosing in brackets all that was struck out and underlining or putting in italics all that was inserted, and including a note explaining this notation at the beginning of the report. See also 5113 and 5122. Occasion and manner of preparation. The Executive Board or Board of Directors of a society reports to the Assembly annually on the work done during the year, and at such other times and upon such subjects as the bylaws may prescribe or the society's business may require. A board report is usually drafted by the President or Secretary, and this draft often passes through the Executive Committee first, if there is one, before it comes up for consideration and adoption by the Board at one of its meetings. See also 51(1-3). A board report should be signed by the President or Chairman of the Board and its Secretary only. Reception and disposition of board reports. In meetings at which the Executive Board is to make a report, the Chair calls for it at the time provided in the order of business, or, if there is no such provision, before committee reports are received or unfinished business is taken up. After the reading of the report, the reporting member moves the adoption of any resolutions included in it, which, as indicated above, should be grouped or reported at the end. If the annual report of the Board is to be formally adopted by the Society before being published, an appropriate wording for the minutes in such a case is the following. The Executive Board, or Board of Directors, etc., submitted support, which, after debate and amendment, if any, was adopted as follows. The words in brackets, having been... having been struck out and those underlined, or in italics, having been inserted before the report was adopted. A society need not endorse the report of its board, and it can even decline to allow the report to be printed, or it can adopt only a part, but whatever it prints or records from the report must show any changes clearly marked. Form and reception of a committee reports in general. General form of committee reports. All committee reports should be submitted in writing, except as noted for particular types of brief reports in a small assembly in 5160-62. In the case of such exceptions, a report can be given orally only if it is brief enough that the Secretary can report its complete substance in the minutes on hearing it given, which he must do if no written copy is submitted for file. Usually a written committee report is not addressed or dated. It is understood to be addressed to the Assembly, and its date is that on which it is presented in the meeting of the Assembly as recorded in the minutes. A committee report should always be worded in the third person, that is, as shown in the next paragraph, not I report or we recommend. Similarly, in an assembly, a committee report is always spoken of by the chair and others as, for example, the report of the Finance Committee, or the report of the committee to which was referred, and then stating the subject. It should never be spoken of as the report of the chairman of the Finance Committee, or never as Mr. Smith's report, even though it is usually presented by the committee chairman, and even if he may have personally drafted it or done most of the work reported. A committee report should begin with an identification of the committee submitting it, the name of the committee in the case of a standing committee, or thus the subject that was referred to the case of a special committee. Thus, for a standing committee, the committee on wishes to report or reports that, or submits the following report, ... or report of the committee on ... For a special committee, the committee to which was referred, stating the subject, reports or recommends that ... or the committee appointed to, stating the purpose, reports that, or submits the following report. If a written committee report is of considerable importance, it should be signed by all the members concurring. Note, regarding signature with an expression of disagreement in a certain particular, see 5171. Back to reading. Otherwise, the committee can authorize its chairman to sign the report alone, in which case he adds the word chairman after his signature. By so signing, the committee chairman certifies that the report has been adopted by the committee as explained in 51.2. When all concurring members sign the report, it is customary for the chairman to sign first, but this is not obligatory. In any case, he should not place the word chairman after his name, except when he signs alone on behalf of the entire committee. The use of the words respectfully submitted preceding the signatures on a committee report is unnecessary and no longer customary. Reception of committee reports. Reports of committees are called for and can be presented in a meeting as follows. If, as is usually the case, a place has been provided in the order of business for the reports of committees, the chair calls for the reports of standing committees first, in the order in which they are listed in the bylaws or other rules. After that, he calls for the reports of the special committee in the order of their appointment. The chair omits calling for the report of any committee that he knows has no report to make. See also 4113. As each report is called for, the committee chairman or other reporting member rises, addresses the chair, and presents the report. Or, if the order of business makes no provision for committee reports, the committee chairman or other reporting member seeks to obtain the floor when no business is pending. and addressing the chair, informs the assembly that the committee has agreed upon a report which he is prepared to submit. If the chair thinks the assembly wishes to hear the report, the chair directs the member to proceed. If anyone objects to the report's reception, or if the chair is in doubt as to whether the report's reception, or if the chair is in doubt as to whether the report should be received at that time, the chair asks if there is a motion to receive the report, or the chair assumes such a motion and puts the question to the assembly. The question is, shall the report be received now? Those in favor of receiving the report now, say aye. Those opposed say no, etc. This question requires a majority vote and is neither debatable nor amendable. If the vote is in the negative, a later time for the reception of the report should be set, either by unanimous consent or by a vote on an incidental main motion setting such time. The manner of presenting the report is the same as described above. For the reception of minority reports, see 5169 through 70. Disposition of particular types of committee reports. The proper method of presenting and disposing of different types of committee reports is explained below, with sample reports being given in certain cases. Whenever a motion by the reporting member is a normal part of the procedure in the examples, it is assumed that this member actually makes the motion rather than leaving it to the chair to state the question without a formal motion. See 5110 through 13. A report at the initiative of a standing committee recommending action. If a standing committee wishes on its own initiative to recommend action by the assembly on a matter within the committee's concern, it is generally desirable, as stated above, for the report to consist of or conclude with one or more proposed resolutions embodying the committee's recommendations. Such resolutions should always be in writing. Although the reporting member in a small assembly may sometimes give accompanying explanations orally, it is usually better to submit a formal written report if it is to contain anything other than the resolutions themselves. In any event, after giving or reading the report, the reporting member moves the adoption of the resolution or resolutions. He may make such a presentation, for example, as follows. Reporting member reading written report. The Buildings and Grounds Committee wishes to report that the clubhouse roof was extensively damaged by the hurricane last week. The committee therefore recommends the adoption of the following resolution. Resolved that the Buildings and Grounds Committee be authorized to request bids for repair of the clubhouse roof and to avoid a contract all the same, provided that, without further authorization, the cost shall not exceed $5,000. George Wilson, Chairman. Mr. President, by direction of or on behalf of the committee, I move the adoption of the resolution just read. The chair then states the question on the resolution, and it is considered just as any other main motion. If the report contains more than one resolution, the reporting member makes a single motion for the adoption of them all, and the rules given in 1025 apply. Although it is not generally the best procedure, a report may sometimes contain recommendations not in the form of motions or resolutions. In any case, as stated above, the recommendation should be placed at the end of the report, even if they have been given separately before. Sometimes also in this connection, it is moved to adopt the committee's recommendation or recommendations. Although, as noted in 51.4, this can lead to confusion as to the precise effect of the motion. A better method of treating a committee recommendation that is not in the form of a resolution, in a case, for example, where the recommendation is to authorize a $2,000 expenditure for a personnel consultant's fee, is to offer a motion like this. In accordance with the recommendation in the committee's report, I move that the expenditure of $2,000 for a personnel consultant's fee be authorized. The reporting member can make such a motion after reading the report, or another member can obtain the floor to do so. In cases where the committee has offered no resolutions embodying its recommendations and the drafting of satisfactory resolution or resolutions covering them is likely to require the further attention of the committee, another member can move to refer the matter to the same or another committee for this purpose. Note, the motion to refer in such case is a main motion, since the matter being referred to is not a pending question. See 13.6. Back to reading. A report on a referred subject on which no resolution or motion was pending. If a subject on which no resolution or motion was pending before motion was pending has been referred to a committee for recommendations, the report usually should conclude with one or more resolutions unless the committee recommends that no action be taken. The committee's report on the subject is referred to as the committee's report on the subject referred to it may be presented, for example, thus. Reporting member reading written report. The committee that was appointed to recommend a suitable recreational facility for the club to donate the new Runnymede Park project funds that no provision has been made for tennis courts. The committee therefore recommends the adoption of the following resolution. Resolved that the club underwrite the cost of 2 tennis courts to be constructed in Runnymede Park. Howard Ford, Chairman. Mr. President, on behalf of the committee, I move the adoption of the resolution just read. The resolution is treated as any other main question, just as in the preceding case dealing with the recommendation of a standing committee. Recommendations not in the form of resolutions are also handled as described in the preceding case. A report on a resolution previously referred to a committee. When a committee reports on a resolution or other main question which is referred to it, 13, or which the rules require to be considered by it before coming before the Assembly with the committee's recommendation, the form of the report and the type of action depends on the nature of this case as follows. Recommending adoption or rejection, or, when a majority of the committee failed to agree, making no recommendation. Such a report in a small assembly can be given orally, provided that the secretary records it in the minutes, for example thus. Reporting member. The committee to which was referred the resolution resolved that the Federation endorse the so-called farmers plan for financing the proposed new school construction program, recommends that the resolution be adopted or not be adopted. The committee to which was referred, blank, has been unable to arrive at a recommendation. If the resolution is too long to fit in the form given above, a form such as the following may be used. Reporting member. The committee to which was referred the resolution relating to governmental reorganization reports it, with the recommendation that it be adopted as referred. The reporting member then hands to the chair or the secretary the copy of the resolution that was turned over to the committee. When the presentation of the report is concluded in each of the above cases, the resolution or main question becomes pending automatically, and the chair states the question accordingly, no motion being necessary. If the committee recommends adoption or makes no recommendation, the chair, as soon as the reporting member has resumed his seat, proceeds. The committee to which was referred the resolutions on recommends its adoption for, or is unable to arrive at a recommendation. The resolution is followed by reading it. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. The question is always stated and put on the adoption of the resolution, that is, so that a vote of aye is a vote of favor in it. Thus, when the committee's recommendation is in the negative, the chair states the question as follows. The committee to which it was referred recommends that it not be adopted. The resolution is followed by reading it. The question is on the adoption of the resolution, the recommendation of the committee to the contrary notwithstanding, or simply, the question is on the adoption of the resolution, in which case the chair may add, the committee recommends that the resolution be rejected. Recommending action on a resolution and an amendment that were pending when referred. If an amendment was pending when the resolution was referred, the report can be given orally in a small assembly, provided that it is recorded in the minutes, and it should first state the committee's recommendation as to the disposition of the amendment, then as to the disposition of the resolution. For example, reporting member. The committee to which was referred the resolution resolved that the proposed expansion of the yacht basin be authorized, together with the pending amendment to add the words at a cost not to exceed $150,000, recommends that the amendment be adopted, and that the resolution is thus amended be adopted. As in the preceding case, no motions are necessary, and the chair states the question first on the amendment, and after it is voted on, then on the resolution. The same principles apply if a primary amendment and a secondary amendment were pending when the resolution was referred. The report states the committee's recommendations first on the secondary amendment, then on the primary amendment, and finally on the resolution, and the chair states the questions in that order. Recommending definite or indefinite postponement. If a resolution or other main question is referred to a committee while a motion to postpone it indefinitely is pending, that motion to postpone indefinitely, 11, is ignored by the committee and by the assembly when the committee reports. But whether or not such a motion was pending at the time of referral, the committee can report the main question with a recommendation that it can be postponed indefinitely or that it be postponed to a certain time, 14. Thus, if A, no amendment was pending at the time of referral, or if B, an amendment was pending and the committee recommends postponement to a certain time, the reporting member makes a motion for the postponement at the conclusion of his presentation. But if C, an amendment was pending and the recommendation is for indefinite postponement, the motion to postpone indefinitely cannot be made until after the amendment has been voted on. See Order of Precedence of Motions, Chapter 5. In each of the three cases, the report can be given orally in a small assembly, provided that it is recorded in the minutes as follows. A, if no amendment is pending at the time of referral. Reporting member. The committee to which was referred the resolution resolved that, recommends, and on behalf of or by direction of the committee, I move that the resolution be postponed until, or be postponed indefinitely. The chair then states the question first on the postponement, and if that is voted down, next on the resolution. B, if an amendment was pending and the recommendation is for postponement to a certain time, the committee to which was referred the resolution resolved that, together with the pending amendment, followed by stating the amendment, recommends, and by direction of the committee I move, that the resolution be postponed until... ... The chair states the question first on the postponement as an A, but if that is voted down, the question in this case is next on the amendment and then on the resolution. C, if an amendment was pending and the recommendation is for indefinite postponement, in which case the motion to postpone indefinitely is not in order when the report is made. The committee to which was referred the resolution resolved that, together with the pending amendment, stating the amendment, recommends that the resolution be postponed indefinitely. The reporting member resumes his seat without making a motion, and the chair immediately states the question on the amendment. After it has been voted on, he can state the question on the indefinite postponement, thus assuming this motion, or he can recognize the reporting member to move it by direction of the committee, and the procedure is then in A above. Recommending amendments. When a committee reports back a resolution or paper with amendments that it proposes, the amendments, at least, should be in writing unless they are very simple. In a small assembly, depending on the complexity of the case, the amendments can be written out on a separate sheet that is handed to the chair or the secretary at the conclusion of an oral presentation, or a more formal written report can be submitted. The latter procedure should be followed in a large body. In the report, the resolution can be included in full and be followed by a statement of the proposed amendments, as in the example below. Or, if the resolution or document is long and copies are available to the members, the report can contain only the amendments with enough of the context of the resolution to make them understood. If no amendment is pending at the time of referral, the reporting member at the conclusion of his presentation moves the adoption of the amendments proposed by the committee, making a single motion covering them all. But if an amendment was pending at the time of the referral, the chair, unless the committee recommends a secondary amendment, whose adoption the reporting member would first move, states the question on the referred amendment first, the reporting member making no motion until after that amendment has been voted on. The following example, although equally suitable for treatment by this method of reporting a substitute, as in 5149 through 51, illustrates the presentation of a written report proposing amendments to a resolution short enough to be read in full, in the case where no amendment was pending at the time of referral. Reporting member reading written report. The committee to which was referred the resolution relating to a proposed scholarship in journalism hereby submits its report. The resolution is the following. Resolve that the Guild establish a 4-year scholarship in journalism at the State University to be open to sons and daughters of Guild members, the recipient to be chosen annually by the Board of Directors of the Guild. The committee recommends that the resolution be amended as follows. 1. By striking out the words 4-year scholarship and inserting the word scholarship covering the last 3 undergraduate years. 2. By striking out the words to be open to sons and daughters of Guild members. And 3. By adding the words upon the recommendation of the Dean of the School of Journalism. And the committee further recommends that, as thus amended, the resolution be adopted. Milton Roth, Chairman, or C-5127. Milton Roth, John Harley, Elizabeth Norton, and Elwood Quinn. Mr. President, that by direction of committee, I move the adoption of the amendments contained in the report. After the chair states the question on the adoption of the amendments proposed by the committee, the procedure is by one of the following methods. A. Normally, the chair immediately rereads or calls for a reading of the first of these amendments, after which it is open to debate and secondary amendment. A vote is then taken on the adoption of the first committee amendment, after which the next one is read, and so on, until all of the committee's amendments have been voted on. No other primary amendments are in order, but only secondary amendments as each committee amendment comes up. After all of the committee's amendments have been acted upon, other amendments which are not precluded by action taken on the committee amendments can be proposed from the floor. When these have been voted on, the chair puts the question on adopting the resolution or paper as amended. Note, the step of taking a vote on the adoption of the entire paper applies only to cases where that paper is pending. This step does not apply in the case of a report on a series of amendments to something previously adopted, 35, such as bylaws that are in effect, see also 57. Back to reading. B. Alternatively, the chair puts a single question on all of the committee's amendments together, except for those for which a member asked for a separate vote. Note, separate votes may not be demanded on conforming amendments, see 1214 through 15, back to reading. Thus, those in favor of adopting the amendments recommended by the committee, except those for which a separate vote has been asked, say aye. Those opposed say no. This is called putting the question on the amendments in gross. He then takes up the remaining amendments separately in their order. This alternative, although it is in order whenever a committee reports multiple amendments to a referred resolution, may be most advisable when the amendments may be expected not to occasion debate or secondary amendment. For example, if they are reported from a committee of the whole, 52, where they have already been open to debate and amendment. C. By unanimous consent, 458 through 63, the Assembly can allow the introduction of a motion to adopt all recommendations in the report without considering the amendment separately. Recommending a substitute. If a committee reports back a resolution with a substitute that it recommends for adoption, at least the substitute should be in writing, just as in the case of any other report proposing amendments. If no amendment was pending when the resolution was referred, the reporting member concludes his presentation by making the motion to substitute, for example, thus. The committee to which was referred the resolution resolved that the proceeds from the recent request to the association from the Asquith estate be invented in stock. The Consolidated Developmental Corporation recommends that for the resolution the following substitute be adopted. Resolve that the executive board be authorized to remain reputable investment counsel with a view to determine the appropriate investment of the proceeds from the Asquith bequest. On behalf of the committee, I move that the resolution last read be substituted for the referred resolution. The chair then states the question on the motion to substitute, but if amendment or amendments are pending when the resolution was referred, then before the motion to substitute can be made, the question is first on the secondary amendment. If one was pending, then on the primary amendment that was pending. When these amendments have been voted on, the reporting member makes the motion to substitute and the chair states the question on it, or the chair can state the question assuming the motion. In any event, the substitute proposed by the committee is treated as in the case of any other motion. The original resolution is open to further amendment, but if the motion to substitute is adopted, the resolution thus substituted can be amended only by adding. Sorry, I think I skipped a line there. In any event, the substitute proposed by the committee is treated as in the case of any other motion to substitute, see 1269 through 90. If the motion to substitute is lost, the original resolution is open to further amendment, but if the motion to substitute is adopted, the resolution thus substituted can be amended only by adding. Regarding substitutes proposed by committees, see also 1277 through 78. In regard to referred questions reported back, see also Resolutions Committee 5967 through 75 and 5980 through 83. A report containing only information. Even if a report contains only an account of work done or a statement of fact or opinion for the Assembly's information, it should be in writing. Apart from filling such a report, however, no action on it is necessary and usually none should be taken. Filing such a report. See also motion to adopt an entire report, 5113, and conditions for amendment of a report by the Assembly before its adoption, 5119. Membership and nominating committee reports of other kinds of committees. When a membership committee reports on names of persons referred to the committee as of applicants for society membership, the report can be rendered orally, but a list of the names of the persons recommended for membership should be submitted in writing. When such a report is made, the chair at once states the question on the admission to membership of the candidates recommended by the committee. The report of the nominating committee consists of a written list of candidates for the office, just as in the case of the membership committee's report. No vote on the nominating committee report is taken, however, the procedure is as described in 46. For the handling of the report of an auditing committee, see 48, 24 through 25. For the report of a committee on bylaws, see 54 and 56. For the reports of the three principal committees that perform parliamentary functions in the organization of a convention, the Credentials Committee, the Committee on Standing Rules, and the Program Committee, see 59. For the report of an investigating committee appointed under disciplinary procedures, see 63. Oral reports and partial minority reports. Summary of types of reports that can be rendered orally in a small assembly. As stated in 5123, committee reports should be submitted in writing with the permissible exceptions noted in the following two paragraphs, 5161 through 62, which apply to very brief reports in a small assembly, pointed that the secretary records the complete substance of the report in the minutes as it is given orally. With respect to a resolution or main question that was referred while pending, 1. If the committee report consists only of a recommendation as to the disposition of the referred resolution or motion, the report can be given orally for implementation of the recommendation themselves. Can be given orally if implementation of the recommendation involves. My apologies, it's a little late. A. No further motion, as when the committee recommends that the referred resolution or motion be adopted or rejected. Or B. The introduction of a subsidiary motion that can be made orally, as when the committee recommends that the referred resolution be postponed definitely or indefinitely or be amended by the change of only a few words. 2. If an amendment or a primary and a secondary amendment were pending with a resolution or main question that was referred and the committee has no new amendments to propose, the report can usually be oral, in which case the reporting member simply states the committee's recommendation as to the adoption or rejection. First of the secondary amendment, and then of the primary amendment, and finally its recommendation as to the disposition of the resolution or main motion, all before any of the referred questions are voted on. When the committee wishes to propose amendments, the amendments themselves, 3. When the committee wishes to propose amendments, the amendments themselves should always be in writing if they involve more than a few words, but the complete report, that is the declaration on behalf of the committee that it recommends the amendments, can be an oral or written depending on the complexity of statement required by the resulting parliamentary situation. If a subject that was not in the form of a pending resolution or motion was referred to a committee for recommendations, and if the committee in its report presents the recommendations in one of more resolutions offered, with no comment, only the resolutions need to be in writing, and the statement that the committee recommends their adoption can be given orally. Action required by a partial report. A partial report of a committee is handled in the same way as the final report. If it is a progress report, okay, with no recommendations or conclusions, it is issued as any other report for information only, and no action as any other report for information only, and no action need be taken. But if the partial report recommends action, the question is put on adopting its proposed resolutions or its recommendations or the report itself, just as if it were to stay the final report. A committee can be designated 36 by a majority vote at the time at which it makes a partial report, formal expression of minority view or minority respect. The formal presentation of a so-called minority report, that is the presentation of an expression of views in the name of a group of committee members, usually not concurring with the committee report, is usually allowed by the assembly when such permission is requested, as explained below. Regardless of whether a minority report is submitted, however, the report adopted by a vote of a majority in the committee should always be referred to as the committee report, never the majority report. Nature of committees and minorities' rights with respect to motions. As indicated above, the formal presentation of minority report is a privilege that the assembly may accord, not a matter of right. Since the appointment of the committees implies that the assembly is primarily interested in the findings of the majority of the committee's members. But in debate on any written or oral report in the assembly, any member of the reporting committee who does not concur has the same right as any other member of the assembly to speak individually in opposition. No one can make allusion in the assembly to what has occurred during the deliberate No one can make allusion in the assembly to what has occurred during the deliberations of the committee, however, unless it is by report of the committee or by unanimous consent. Form of minority report, minority recommendations. A minority report in writing may begin. The undersigned, a minority of the committee appointed blank, not agreeing with the majority, desire to express their views in the case. If the committee report concludes with the proposed resolution, the minority can A. recommend rejection of the resolution, B. recommend amendment of it, or C. recommend adoption of some other suitable motion designed to dispose of the resolution appropriately. If the committee report is for information only, the views of the minority may be similarly constructed or may conclude with a motion. Reception of minority report. When the minority of a committee wishes to make a formal presentation of its views, it is customary, unless the assembly refuses permission, to receive its report immediately after the report of the committee. In such a case, the member presenting the committee report can properly notify the assembly that the minority wishes to submit its views in a separate report. As soon as the chair has stated the appropriate question on the committee report, he calls for the minority presentation unless someone objects, in which case he puts the question on the reports being received. A majority vote is required to receive a minority report. The question is undebatable. When the minority report is presented, it is for more information, and it cannot be acted upon except by a motion to substitute it for the report of the committee. Whether the views of the minority are formally presented or not, however, any member can move that resolutions proposed by the committee be amended, or that they be postponed indefinitely, or that some other appropriate action be taken. Indicating agreement with a report accepted in a specified particular. If a written report of a committee is signed by all who concur and a committee member is in agreement with the report accepted in one particular, he can, after all who agreed to the reports have signed, add a statement that he concurs with the report except the part that he specifies, and then sign the statement, regardless of whether a minority report is to be submitted. Similarly, a committee member who agrees with most of a minority report can sign it with an added note indicating what he does not agree with, just as in the case of the committee report. If the committee members in the minority do not agree, the assembly can allow more than one minority report to be submitted.